We left off the last video about structuring an essay with this image. You have an intro, you have a conclusion, you have body paragraphs, and you have topic sentences. And I'm sorry, these are just the tedious parts of this that we do have to talk about. But I want to say a little bit more about these topic sentences and show you an example. And we can continue to talk about examples, and you can always set up an appointment with me to get some good ideas. But the second part of this is going to be really focusing in a little bit more on topic sentences and then discussing conclusions. So let's go to an example of a paper that I have done and I got a decent grade on because, as you remember, I am a student. So this paper I mentioned or I showed before as an example of MLA format. And I'm not starting from the very beginning, I'm starting on page 6, but I did have two paragraphs that were the introduction. And my thesis statement, I needed to set up all of the information here. And then my thesis statement finally came here. And it is a longer kind of thesis statement. So this would be my introduction is 2 paragraphs and my thesis statement is here. I said the YouTube channel ContraPoints is one example of a digital archives whose artifacts, taken as a whole, tell a story that is consistent with but different from the arguments present in each individual artifact. The holistic viewing experience afforded by digital archives contributes to a richness and complexity to the way creators and archivists make meaning and to the work researchers must do to interpret the collection. So this is a generalized thesis, right? I don't list the different ways. I talk about it later on. But basically my argument is that an entire YouTube channel is a digital archives, and when you look at it, it's different from the way a physical archive tells a story. So I wanted to show you my a series of really clear topic sentences. So you remember I said that each paragraph needs to have a topic sentence, right? So we already saw my intro, we saw my thesis, and then each body paragraph explains one point at a time, and it starts with a topic sentence that really gives information. So the beginning of I had to do a thick description, and these are headers that were provided to me by my instructor. So she said, you need to describe the YouTube page, right? So I said, first, this is my topic sentence. The home page of a YouTube channel serves like a book cover and table of contents. So guess what? This entire paragraph is going to talk about the home page of this YouTube channel that I'm discussing. So I say that this is my topic sentence, and the rest has all to do with the home page, right? I don't ever really change from this paragraph. I don't start talking about other things. I only talk about what my topic sentence expresses. Then I say, oh, whoops. Then I say in another topic sentence that each page accessible from the home page contains elements that Rose and Morse would call archival description. So this is going to be about Morris and Rose's understanding of archival description. I talk about their words and I explain all of the other pages such as home, videos, playlist, community, channel, and I explain those. So this whole paragraph is about those other pages and it's about just saying that it's about archival description. Then I talk about these 3 specific tabs and I say what they're about. And my topic sentence tells my readers that that's what I'm going to be talking about. So I explain it very clearly and I give them lots of information of it. Then I discuss specifically the videos tab and I talk about exactly what's in that. So each of these are topic sentences that give my readers understanding of what's coming next. And if you want to talk about something different from this, you need to have a different paragraph. So hopefully that helps you think about it a little bit more. Now let's talk about conclusions. And I know that conclusions can be very obnoxious and difficult to have to write. So have you heard this before? Tell the audience what you're going to say it, then tell them what you said. This is a quote from Dale Carnegie, and he's talking about when you give a speech. And this is something that you've probably heard. You begin in your introduction with a thesis statement saying what you're going to say, you explain it in your body paragraphs, then you repeat it. This is just a little aside to say that Dale Carnegie, I read his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and he actually has a lot to say about rhetoric. This is something that I wrote in a paper. We can talk about that if you're ever interested in it, but that's probably not for today. The point is that this is actually not a good strategy for writing an essay. It might be a good strategy for speaking. However, you do not want to repeat yourself and be super redundant. So, there's a difference between speech and writing. When you're listening to a speech, you don't see anything. You need to hear the person say the things many, 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 many times. However, if you're writing, guess what? You can always go back and read again and understand it. You don't need to say the same thing again in writing because it's boring, it's redundant. I want you to tell me something a little bit new. So I want to introduce this strategy for introductions, body paragraphs, and conclusions. It's what I call the zoom in, elaborate, and zoom out method. So when you get your introduction, like we talked about, you want to get really specific. By the way, Ricky Martin, does anybody still follow him? Because he's an incredible performer. I just recently saw him on RuPaul's Drag Race, and it was amazing. But the point is, you want to get really specific. Remember, you don't want to start big in your introduction. You want to help the reader understand exactly what you're going to talk about. Then, in your body paragraphs, you want to do a really good job of explaining in detail exactly what you're talking about. But in your conclusion, then you want to say, okay, now that we've talked about that, let's zoom out. Let's not just restate what we said in the body and in the introduction. Let's give this a little context. So, what does it mean to zoom out? Well, in your conclusion, you can help the reader understand why this is important or what's the bigger picture. How does what you say connect to something larger? You can help us understand what your article or what your essay, what you said, what does it mean for the future of that kind of media or for the future of some sort of issue or problem? You could also say, how does what you talked about relate to other similar things that are happening in other media or arguments? And maybe do you have any recommendations or hopes? So here's just one way to think about doing a conclusion is to zoom out as opposed to restating and being redundant.